Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for another video. Today's video comes with a little bit of a trigger warning. We're going to be detailing some behaviors that were detailed by somebody else, namely Princess Diana. Nothing too serious, but I think it is important to talk about how she detailed her own experience with her eating disorder, so just a little bit of a warning about that. I've wanted to make this video for a while, not only because I grew up in a very pro Princess Diana household. My mum loved Diana. She bought every item of clothing she saw Diana in that she could afford, including this black swimmer that I swear to God she wore until it literally disintegrated on her body. And I always had a lot of admiration, not just for who Diana was as a person, but the less reported sort of activism that she was involved in. We know that she had a huge role in landmine awareness and having landmines removed in certain parts of the world. Little known eating disorder activist, though. She did a lot to raise awareness about eating disorders, not only in the way that she spoke out generally about eating disorders, but the fact that she bravely shared her own lived experience at a time when we were deeply, deeply ignorant about eating disorders. So I wanted to talk about that today and how she was part of sort of an important shift in how we talked about the eating disorder experience. So as we know, Princess Diana became a princess by marrying a prince. I'm so knowledgeable. So Princess Diana obviously married Prince Charles. Sadly, they did inevitably end up getting divorced after having Prince Harry and Prince William. Fun fact, I used to go to the same pub as Prince Harry when I lived in London, in Fulham, at a pub called the Sands End. And every time I saw him there, he was wearing the same turquoise shirt with the buttons done up in the wrong holes, and it looked like it was a tissue that had been jumped on. Just a little bit of a behind the scenes fun fact for you. So it was reported in the media, obviously, through things getting leaked, that Princess Diana, throughout her marriage, was suffering from bulimia nervosa, but she didn't come out and speak about it publicly until Andrew Morton's biography about her in 1992 called Diana, Her True Story. She was leaking her side of the story and tapes of her talking about her experience, which made their way to Andrew Morton. So she did have a hand in what was being told in that book, and it was really explosive. This was a huge deal that she was working behind the scenes. They never met, but she was sharing her story with him, and he released this explosive book. We still have it at home, with direct quotes from her, and she had clearly been directly involved. Massive bombshell, huge scandal. So her own personal disclosure about her eating disorder came in that book when she stated, "The bulimia started the week after we got engaged. My husband put his hand on my waistline and said, 'Oh, a bit chubby here, aren't we?' And that triggered off something in me. I remember the first time I made myself sick. I was so thrilled. I thought, this is the release, the tension." This is the real importance that I wanted to highlight, and we'll continue to see in terms of how Diana spoke about her lived experience of an eating disorder. Prior to Princess Diana detailing her experience with bulimia, most of what we really talked about was anorexia nervosa. Karen Carpenter really comes to mind as far as when we think about the media reporting on eating disorders and the general societal understanding of eating disorders at that time would probably really be encapsulated by the experience of Karen Carpenter, who passed away from anorexia nervosa. At that time, it was called the Slimmer's disease. Oh, when I get really down about the current state of eating disorder awareness and reporting, I remember that that was not so long ago, and see the enormous strides that we've taken to get to a place where we at least have people who are knowledgeable and who are really feeding a more productive, accurate, responsible message about eating disorders from a clinical perspective, but from an experience perspective as well, and obviously helping to guide and instruct the media on what is and isn't helpful. And if you've seen any interviews with Karen Carpenter where they address her Slimmer's disease, it is literally skin crawling. I just feel so sorry for that woman. So the fact that Princess Diana was highlighting bulimia nervosa was really significant at the time. These days, it would feel not less significant, but it wouldn't have the same level of importance, because at the time, even to be talking about bulimia was like, whoa, there's another eating disorder. Luckily, we are increasingly, does need to improve, but we increasingly are more aware of and making more efforts to highlight and connect to people suffering from a spectrum of eating disorders, including ARFID, OSFED. Binge eating disorder obviously is one that people were predominantly suffering from for a long time as like the biggest part of the sufferer population as far as percentage wise, and were never being talked about. So Diana's introduction of bulimia nervosa into the wider conversation about eating disorders was at the time, relative to what we understood and what people were talking about, it was a really, really big deal. The fact that she was disclosing her own personal lived experience and shattering not only the illusion of her relationship with Prince Charles and sort of the royal life, I guess, behind the scenes, but that she was most importantly describing the eating disorder as a coping mechanism. Again, because of that reporting that we saw about anorexia, the slimmer's disease, which is so much about appearance, that's essentially what they're implying, that it's just about weight loss and appearance. Here was Princess Diana at every turn making it very clear that this was not about vanity, that this was not about superficiality. It was not, even if it was about those things, that was the very surface cover the eating disorder took for its deeper purpose, which was as a coping mechanism to try to deal with this tension, to deal with this sense of low self-esteem that a comment from her husband, or soon-to-be husband, about her appearance triggered something so deeply low in her as far as her self-esteem and self-image. Once she had separated from Prince Charles, she went from feeding an author her tapes to taping a widely, globally watched interview with Martin Bashir for the BBC, and that was in 1995, before they got divorced, but they were already separated, I believe. This was such a big deal. Like, everybody was talking about it. I think Mum was overseas at the time, and she was meant to be going out for like a business dinner, and she didn't go because she was like, absolutely not, I have to watch the Martin Bashir interview. So it was a really, really big deal, especially because it was a huge, like, the fact that she'd been feeding information to Andrew Morton was one thing, but this was coming from her own mouth in a televised interview. So obviously much of it was about the divorce, and it was about, you know, life in the royal family, but she was specifically asked about her bulimia. I'm not going to show the interview in this video because I have tried to look for it everywhere, and I'm pretty sure people get dinged for copyright. So unfortunately I can't show it to you, but I do have quotes. So what she said in that interview was, "I had bulimia for a number of years. It's a secret disease. You inflict it upon yourself because your self-esteem is at a low ebb and you don't think you're worthy or valuable. You fill your stomach up 4 or 5 times a day. Some do it more, and it gives you a feeling of comfort. It's like having a pair of arms around you, but it's temporary. Then you're disgusted at the bloatedness of your stomach and you bring it all up again." So obviously there she's detailing the specific behaviors she used, which would have been earth-shattering at the time, and was earth-shattering at the time, that something which was so incredibly not spoken about, no, you know, real awareness, public awareness at the time, very irresponsible media reporting. The fact that she was specifically detailing behaviors was really, really significant. The fact that, again, she takes the effort to say, this is about low self-esteem. This is about coping. This is about wanting, as she says, that feeling of comfort, and that she highlights that it's temporary. But even though it's temporary, it's worth it because you just don't feel that worthy or valuable, and you're kind of taking whatever you can get, which I think so many of us can understand and resonate with as far as what those behaviors have represented to many of us, right? Again, whether it was anorexia or bulimia, no one was really talking on a public scale about these things the way that Princess Diana was. And certainly not from someone who had so much to risk, so much at stake as far as being brave enough to put their face to this illness, this really misunderstood, and when it was talked about, stigmatized, stereotyped illness. Pretty extraordinary, particularly given what she was going through at the time. She also gave a speech when she gave a keynote address. This was in 1993, so this was a couple of years before the Martin Bashir interview. So she wasn't specifically detailing her own eating disorder, but I'd say by that point it would have been reported in the Andrew Morton book. So she knew that people knew, wasn't directly putting her hand up to the same experience at that point, but again, shows her level of interest in bringing awareness to this issue.
Anorexia or bulimia show how an individual can turn the nourishment of the body into a painful attack on themselves. And they have, at their core, a far deeper problem than mere vanity. Yet all of us can help prevent the seeds of this disease developing. As parents, teachers, family, and friends, we have an obligation to care for our children in ways which clearly show our children that we value them. With greater awareness and more information, these people who are locked into a spiral of secret despair can be reached before the disease takes over their lives.
So this speech really drives home sort of the point of this video, which is that this was such a turning point for eating disorder awareness, how we spoke about eating disorders, people's understanding of eating disorders. We still had a long way to go and have a long way to go. But the introduction of bulimia as an eating disorder that people were talking about, but the additional insight about what eating disorders were and are all about, that we still have a bit of a fight in helping people to understand that these are mental illnesses with physical symptoms. And back in the 90s, Princess Diana was certainly doing her very best to try to impart at every level, at a media level, social level, and here speaking to specialists in the field at this keynote address, what this was really about, and using her lived experience in one way or another to highlight her insight and her knowledge from her own background. That is a really important part of sort of eating disorder awareness history, and really goes to show that we've come further than sometimes I think we give ourselves credit for, as far as closing some of those huge gaps with knowledge, awareness, reporting, advocacy, and to give credit where it's due, that despite the fact that her eating disorder was reported on in a really negative, derogatory sense much of the time, Princess Diana was still able to and willing to put her own name to something that so many people didn't understand and had not much of an interest in understanding. That this was sort of the height of, oh my God, why would you have an eating disorder? Just eat a burger. That was really the dominant thinking and the dominant party line when it came to eating disorders more generally. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Were you alive when all of this was going on? I was 8 when she gave the Martin Bashir interview. And even I knew then what a big deal it was, but that's because we truly were obsessed with Diana. We have all the books. We have multiple copies of the books. All our family members own the books. Like, why didn't we just buy one and share it around? Not very environmentally friendly, family. What are you talking about? I have to go. This is what lockdown madness looks like. Also, amazing news. I heard from Butterfly this week. The campaign that I was in with them for their body image campaign back halfway through the year, we raised $300,000. And if you were a part of that, my sincere thanks to you. That is an extraordinary number, especially in a pandemic, extraordinary. So thank you from the bottom of my heart if you were generous enough to help us along with that campaign. Much love to you. Anyway, guys, I will see you next week with another video. Take care of yourselves, stay safe, and take care of yourself, particularly if you're in lockdown. Not easy times. Much love. Take care.